Welcome back, everybody. We are on season 3 of Ichabod's House podcast, and we are happy to be here. Season 3, episode 1, to be exact. I am your host, Andy, along with my beautiful sister, Jen.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here.
And we are discussing today the Mothman of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. We are very excited about this. We've waited like 2 years to do this. We've been saying we were going to do it. And here we are, top of season 3, putting it out there. And since this is the first episode of season 3, we do not have a Google and Beyond. I know y'all are disappointed, but we don't.
Trust us, we'll have plenty. As
After today
goes along.
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
I had several Ichabod's nose picks that I could have picked from, but I'm going to go with the one that I actually remember because I don't remember any of them. So my Ichabod's nose pick is on Netflix, and it's called Indian Matchmaking.
Oh, okay.
And I love it. And I already binged all 8 episodes. So if you just like that, and it's not super trashy like The Bachelor or anything like that. It's not where people get together and make out. It's just people getting hooked up.
Cool.
By a matchmaker.
Okay, there is a matchmaker.
There is a matchmaker. Yeah, and so it's just fun. It's just fun. Plus I love the accent.
Mm-hmm.
I love that accent. And so yeah, and I think it's really fun to see how other cultures do things. So
I'll check that out. It's on Netflix. Mine is on HBO, and it is Perry Mason. They revamped Perry Mason. There's a season 1 from 2020, and then COVID hit, so they just came out with a season 2 in 2023. And you can laugh all you want, Little Miss Fancy Pants.
I am totally laughing. Who stars as Perry Mason in this?
The guy from The Americans, and I can't think of his name.
The curly-haired dude?
Yeah. And he's Perry Mason. And he does a great job.
Does he have curly hair?
Kind of. It takes place in 1932 is when it starts, right at the Depression. So it's, yeah.
Okay, I'm not laughing anymore.
It's edgy. They use the F word a lot. I
don't think they swore in 1932.
So then you'll see some boobs.
Okay,
so it's
that kind of a show.
It's that kind of a show. So
okay,
it's some good stuff. So that's my pick.
Speaking of boobs, Chris told me that all over TikTok right now are women protesting the Ukraine war with their boobs. They are topless and they have black magic marker written on their chests. And he said, boobs. They're all over TikTok. And I'm like, well, what is your feed lined up? What algorithm are you? Because I asked Elizabeth, I said, are you getting a lot of boobs on your TikTok? She goes, Mom, no, gross. And so anyway, I thought that was interesting.
So one has to wonder, it would seem to me that if people are showing boobs because there's war, doesn't more boobs then equal more war? Isn't that how that would go?
Maybe, yes, because they'd want more boobs.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So more war.
Okay.
I don't know. It was very interesting. And I thought, well, I guess if that's a way to protest, I don't understand how that's really, I don't know. I guess I don't understand how protests work. So there we have it.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was a little interesting piece of news there. So, all right. Well, I think we're ready to get into this about the Mothman. So whenever you're ready.
I think we are ready to get going here. Well, we've all heard tales about the Mothman, tales that floated around Point Pleasant in the late 1960s. And if you've spent any time listening to this podcast, you know that the 1960s was a golden age for UFOs and men in black. People all over the world were reporting things in the sky that hovered, dipped, dove, appeared, disappeared, and twinkled in the darkness. Sometimes fascinating, sometimes terrifying. One thing was certain. If you spoke about it, you were labeled a kook.
Oh, we definitely would have had t-shirts. Definitely.
Kook 1 and Kook 2, or
yes.
I'm with Kook.
Yeah, absolutely. This was the time of Woody Derenberger. Oh, okay,
So,
Darren Berger.
so a little he was Lanulus, remember?
Right, but it says a B. It says a G there instead of a B, and so
So you should know his name regardless of what I type. You should just be able to
I
infer what it actually is.
I thought, well, Darren. How am I going to say that? Darren Gerger. I think it's Darren DeGerger, DeBerger.
Dear burger.
Okay, Woody Darren Berger. That's way easier to say, and his visits to Lanulos with cats, naked cats, or was
No,
he naked?
all the on Lanulus were
Those were
naked.
naked, but there were cats too, weren't there? Lots.
No,
I think there was some. Yeah, there was some with cats. Cats and Lanulos. I don't know. They
I think you're
talked or
talking
something.
about Werebear book, Werecat. Oh, and I just want to interject this here. There are plenty of shape-shifting, dirty Mothman books out there too for your pornographic
Really?
literary consumption. Mhm,
I think that word porn is fun.
mhm. So there you
Okay,
go.
there you go. All right. So this was the time of Project Blue Book, not to be confused with the Blue Book that you buy cars with.
Right.
This was the time of Vietnam and the Cold War. Drive-in theaters were still a thing, and gasoline could still be ordered in regular or unleaded.
It was against this backdrop that the Mothman made his first appearance, diving into Point Pleasant like a dark angel. And like angels from the
Ooh.
Bible who served as heralds for upcoming events, this creature seemed to be heralding an impending disaster.
Dun dun dun. But before we get into all of that, we want to do a couple of things. The first is that we want to acknowledge our sources. Oh, I thought we were going to do my voice. I had to change my voice for that.
You did. You did good. You did good.
The Mothman Prophecies by John Keel and Mothman, The Facts Behind the Legend by Donnie Sargent Jr. and Jeff Wamsley. Wamsley. The next thing we want to do is jump back in time a bit to review the weird shit that happened with regard to the Mothman in years gone by.
Yeah, that's right. We want to spend a little bit of time today reviewing other sightings as well as reports of other freaky things that were happening at the time. And I want to say that the Mothman legend and the happenings are not as mothy as one would hope. And you'll get this is a 3-episode series, and this is the first. And over time, you'll kind of get to understand that. But anyway, okay, so we're going to start with the 19th century. The year was 1877. The place was Brooklyn, New York. There, on a hot summer day on Coney Island, locals were entertained by a flying figure soaring high above their heads. A certain Mr. W. H. Smith witnessed this and thought to himself, holy shit, that's really weird. So he wrote into the New York Sun and described the figure as a winged human form.
3 years later, on September 12th, 1880, many reputable persons saw the creature again and reported that he was engaged in flying toward New Jersey because
Oh my
that's what you
God.
do. You want to go into Jersey.
Who doesn't want to go to Jersey? Oh my God. I
I
want
love
to.
Jersey. It's like going to Wisconsin. You zip in, you zip out.
For real.
Witnesses believed it to be flying at about 1,000 feet in the air. Not only was he huge, I have to re-say that, and not only was he huge, he had bat wings. Some folks even got a good look at his face and said this: he had a cruel and determined expression. I think a lot of New Yorkers could have a cruel and determined expression, animal or human.
Isn't that kind of standard?
I think so.
Welcome to New York. Here's the face you need to wear while you're here. I must acknowledge that Mr. Keel is careful to point out that some may have thought of this as a hoax. Perhaps someone had just built a glider or something and had successfully launched it into the air after aiming it toward New Jersey because, let's be honest, who doesn't want to go to New Jersey?
We're so like minded.
I know. Who doesn't?
Who doesn't? But keep in mind, this is 1880, and the foot was only about 8 inches long at that time. I wondered, where is this going? So we don't know if this creature was actually flying 1,000 feet in the air. It was probably closer to 600. Also, there were no airplanes yet, and unless someone could jump really high or fall from a great distance, no one was flying.
And people in the 1800s lied all the time. I give you Paul Bunyan, Tinkerbell, John Henry, who was real, but let's come on. He didn't defeat the steam engine single handedly. The bottom line is this: people didn't know about science. The world wasn't even declared as being round until around 1973, and dragons ruled in Europe until 1981. So we need all of you to keep this in mind as we move forward.
And those are some facts you can stick to,
Those are widely believed facts.
that you can
Widely
quote.
believed.
You just quote them and say them that you got them right here.
You're going to sound so smart.
You're so fucking smart. It's not
Mhm.
even funny. You're going to be wicked smart, is what you're going to be.
You're going to be wicked fucking smart. You
Oh
go to
my
a
God.
cocktail party and hobnob with your highbrow friends, and you just tell them, you know, when dragons finally stop ruling Europe, they'll be impressed.
So fucking impressed. All right. But back to 1962, which we weren't talking about, but we're going to talk about now. We're talking about May 2nd, 1962. John Wimperly. I might change my last name, Wimperly, who probably owed lots of people lots of money, did manage to make an I hate it when you do this to me, ornithopter, and coasted a whopping 993 feet, which would be what, like 452 feet?
Well, it would be 2/3 of 993 feet based on the
Oh
fact
my God.
that the foot was only 8 inches long in the 1800s. Or that
Yeah.
was 1962. So the foot was probably a good 12 inches. So it's 993 feet.
Okay.
10 stories, 9
I
stories.
thought I thought you were going to do math and divide fractions again, and I was going to have to reach through the video computer screen and slap you.
No, nope,
All right.
nope.
Okay, so there you go.
Well, we know you all want to know what an ornithopter is.
Well, I definitely don't, but here we go. It's a flying machine with wings instead of propellers. Oh, kind of like what Da Vinci sketched, huh?
Da Vinci had tried his hand at making one of these in the 1600s.
See, okay, people, we write these and don't share them with each other. And so I am finding out about this stuff live as it's happening in real time. And it just always, I say things and then bam, there it is.
There it is. It's kind of eerie. It's
We
kind of like
both,
it's kind of like between the two of us, we share one brain.
it totally is. And yeah, it's kind of like we're psychically linked a little bit. I don't know.
Oh
It's
my
super weird.
god,
Oh my
that's
God.
so weird.
Okay. All right.
So at any rate, Da Vinci tried his hand at making one of these in the 1600s, but he only succeeded in painting himself in drag instead, a la the Mona Lisa. I'm just gearing our
No,
listeners up for their European vacations so that they sound really smart wherever they go.
so you're saying that Da Vinci is really the Mona Lisa? I don't think he was having a good wig day that day. I'm just saying. That's all I'm
Just
going to say
saying.
about that. All right then. And so the world lumbered on, wingless.
They did, for real. In July 1908, in July 1908, a Russian traveler named V.K. Arseniev. Oh God, I love that name.
I
VK
do too.
I am V.K. Arseniev. He reported this after an encounter near the Gobeli River in Russia. He said this:
Oh my God. I saw. I can't do it. I'm trying. I saw the mark on the path that was very similar to a man's footprint. This is the worst Russian accent ever. My dog, Alpha, bristled up. So- snarled. Babushka. That's what I need to think of. Babushka. I saw the mark on the path that was very similar to a man's footprint. My dog Alpha bristled up, snarled, and then something rushed about nearby, trampling among the bushes. However, it didn't go away, but topped nearby. Standing stock still. We had been standing like that for some minutes. Then I stooped, picked up a stone, and threw it towards some unknown animal. Then something happened that was quite unexpected. I heard the beating of wings. Something large and dark emerged from the fog and flew over the river. A moment later, it disappeared into the dense mist,
Okay,
like my
so
Russian accent did.
so we had French, we had a little Sean Connery
Oh,
there.
you noticed that was Sean. I was trying to channel him.
Uh, although I believe he was Scottish,
He
not
was, he was, but he had the, the, I don't know. I feel like they all talk in the front of their mouths. So I
they
was
do.
trying to, you know,
We all understood you were, you know, we all understood the words you were saying. So,
listen.
well done.
Um, I get paid for my American accent only.
All right,
Once I
so
start getting paid for my Russian accent, I will perform better. I'm just
that
saying.
it was beautiful. So Arsenyev talked to the natives about what he'd seen that night as they sat around the fire in their fur hats. None of them were surprised. They said they knew about the flying man. They
Of
already knew
course they
about
did.
him. They did. His tracks appeared in the snow and could be followed for a time until they disappeared, as if whoever left them suddenly took flight.
Oh my goodness.
I know. In 1947, 16
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm. Um, In 1947, 16 people in San Diego sat on a roof and watched a meteor shower. Oh, that sounds like fun. Although it's possible they were Although it's possible they were high on refrigerated jello, we can't be sure as drug testing wasn't legal then and anyone could ingest as much jello as they wanted and sit on a rooftop. I think that's fantastic.
Mhm.
But this was different than the average 1947 San Diego rooftop meteor shower viewing because these guys saw what looked like a giant bluish white airplane with two red lights. And the wings didn't resemble airplane wings, they seemed to be more like butterfly wings. And they flapped as this airborne thing propelled across the sky. Did they hear the whooshing? Whoosh.
Whooshoo, whooshoo. I don't know. Good question. In January of 1948, Mrs. Bernard Zakowski of Chehalis, Wisconsin, saw a whizzing and a sizzing man with silver wings. It hovered just over her barn, and try as she might, she couldn't see his genitalia through the silvery fabric of his suit. The Air Force just laughed. But no one was laughing 4 months later when three men just 40 miles away from her barn reported not one, but three birdmen flying around in the sky.
They were having a thing.
They were having
They
a
were
thing.
having a little meeting.
And nobody could see their genitalia neither.
They're very good at listen, if they wanted you to see it, they'd wear mesh.
They would. If they wanted to show it, they'd wear mesh.
They'd
And
wear
I
mesh.
tell you, they could kind of make out the bulge, but they couldn't see. That was
They
just
had
kind
a
of it.
they had a
And
little
they were
camel
really
toe.
looking. They were
They had
really looking.
well, yeah, I'm sure they said that camel toe was magnificent though. It's
Mhm.
fantastic. This is way before the 80s jumpsuits even. This is 1947, people.
Exactly.
All right. So Viola Johnson saw the same thing as these men and said this to reporters. I could plainly see that they were men. They wore dark, drab flying suits. I couldn't make out their arms, but I could see their legs dangling down, and they kept moving their heads like they were looking around. Well, if you're flying, I would hope that you're looking around. I'm just saying. I think that's normal. I couldn't tell if they had goggles on, but their heads looked like they had helmets on. I couldn't see their faces.
He was a flying wild man in a
A
suit,
blue leisure suit.
in a blue. He was a big, beastly, bulging man in a blue leisure suit. In 1953, Hilda Walker reported seeing a man dressed in tight black clothing. He
Oh,
was sort
Hilda.
of glowing and playing the bongos and saying things like, "Hey, I'm a hip cat.
I think
Hey,
he
don't
had
be harsh
hair
on my
coming out of
brother."
his shirt.
He
He had
did.
hair coming out of his shirt.
A big medallion. He was sort of glowing, and I could see him plain and could see he had big wings folded at his shoulders. Was this the first beatnik sighting? In reality, we don't know, but we have our suspicions.
In 1961, folks down in Florida saw the Birdman. One lady described it as a big vulture with a wingspan of 55 feet, which would be actually 55 feet because it's not the
Mhm.
1800s.
It's not the 1800s.
So one has to wonder, how big does a dead animal have to be in order to attract a 55-foot vulture?
I know.
Interesting.
I don't know. That same year, 1961, the creature that would become known as the Mothman finally showed up in Point Pleasant, West Virginia.
Well, it is about damn time.
I know.
A young woman drove along the Ohio River with her father when he passed a park known as Chief Cornstalk's hunting ground. I wonder if there's a park like that in Nebraska
I don't know.
named Cornstalk. I don't know. Interesting. As they putted along in their American made vehicle, a tall, man like creature appeared, standing on the blue road in front of them, wearing that same blue leisure suit. Maybe he was zipping his pants, adjusting the camel toe. Maybe not. The report doesn't say, but the woman said this.
I slowed down, and as we got closer, we could see that it was much larger than a man. Oh wait, we're in West Virginia, right? I slowed down, and as we got closer, I could see that it was much larger than a man, a big gray figure. It stood in the middle of the road. Then a pair of wings unfolded from its back, and they practically filled the whole road. It almost looked like a small airplane. Then it took off straight up, disappearing out of sight in seconds. We were both terrified. I stepped on the gas and raced right out of there.
That's what she said to
That
all
is,
of that.
that's exactly.
And in case you're thinking that there are just moth men, let me tell you, there has been a sighting of a naked moth woman as well. Were nipple tassels involved?
We'll just have to read on and find out, Andy.
Okay, fantastic.
This report was investigated by Don Whaley, whom John Keel describes as an experienced student of the unknown. And Don, in turn, describes the guy who saw the naked lady with wings thusly.
He is a reliable observer and he swears this event is well beyond the capacity of his imagination.
This witness, Mr. Earl Morrison, was a private first class in the Marines at the time. He was serving a tour in Vietnam in summer of 1969, where, as we all know, there were no drugs or alcohol of any kind. And no one came home having fathered illegitimate children, and no one came home addicted to marijuana or hallucinogens.
And leisure suits were not popular at that time at all.
Nope. At the time of the sighting, he and two other completely non inebriated soldiers were sitting on top of a bunker near Da Nang.
I'm sorry. That was funny. Okay. All of a sudden, I don't know why, we all three looked out there in the sky and we saw this figure coming toward us. It had kind of a glow. I couldn't make out what it was at first. It started coming toward us real slowly. All of a sudden, we saw what looked like wings, like a bat, only it was gigantic compared to what a regular bat would be. And we were like, whoa, check that out. After it got close enough so we could see what it was, it looked like a naked woman. And we were like, whoa, her skin was black, her body was black, the wings were black, everything was black. Like, whoa, but it glowed. It glowed in the night, kind of a greenish cast to it. There was a glow on her and around her. Everything glowed. Looked like she glowed and threw off a radiance, man. We saw her arms toward the wings, and they looked like regular folded arms, each with a hand and fingers and everything, but they had skin from the wings over them. And when she flapped her wings, there was no noise at first. It looked like her arms didn't have any bones in them because they were limber, just like a bat. She started going over us, and we didn't hear anything. She was right above us, and when she got over the tops of our heads, she was maybe 6 or 7 feet up. We couldn't do anything. We didn't know what to do. We just froze. We just watched.
Like, whoa, let's legit or bullshit here. There have been a lot of sightings,
Oh my
a lot of
goodness.
reports from a lot of people. So let's dissect if they're crazy, or is there a winged being from another dimension that likes to fly around at night? And wouldn't the moth man be as naked as the moth woman? Is it just the boobs that make it obvious?
Okay, first of all, women are always getting the shaft. So if there are a bunch of
That's
moth
what she
people,
said.
that's what she said. If there are a bunch of moth people out there, I guarantee you that the moth men got the flying suits and they just said, you know what? You little ladies go freeze your titties off because you're not getting the suits. We only have enough money for the men.
Although I will also say this was the era of bra burning. And
Oh,
maybe the moth women were like,
fuck
fuck
y'all.
you. I'm not wearing this moth bra anymore. This moth bra doesn't fit and I'm not going to wear it anymore.
And the underwire is just way too uncomfortable.
Especially if you're flapping those wings. I mean, even if you've got arms, the wings on your back are still going to make your scapula go, back and forth. There's going to be some chafing, some issues.
I love how you can make all these things sciencey. I love it.
Well, I'm just thinking to myself,
I
is
know.
it is it actually oppression that we need our listeners to weigh in on this. Is it actually oppression if the moth woman doesn't wear a bra?
Right. Is it her body, her choice?
Is it her body, her choice?
Or did they not have enough funds like the female soccer players? They just give them the shaft
That's right. I don't
and
know.
they get the crappy uniforms. I don't know. I don't know. Things to think of. I think I'm going with legit right now, sister. They made a Hollywood movie out of it. Hello.
Well, and people have clearly reported things through time. I do think that in the 1800s, particularly, if something was over 3 or 4 stories in the air, you know,
Yeah.
which would be 40 or 50 feet, I think it would be very difficult for people to estimate that height because they didn't have a reference point up in the air past a certain
Right.
height because
Right.
buildings just weren't much taller than what 5 or
Right.
6 stories in the 1800s at the most. So I I don't think anybody's necessarily lying, but I think that their estimates as far as height are probably off, which leads me to wonder if their estimates on the size of the wingspan would be off as well. But I don't do I think people are lying? No, I don't.
I don't think they're lying, and I think what they saw was true.
Well, there you go.
So
Okay,
there
so
we go.
we're both at legit right now.
We're both legit right now. All
Okay.
right. So, from 1968 to 1969, there were tons of UFO sightings over in Nam. Soldiers even reported hearing phantom helicopters. Oh, interestingly, the Mothmen tend to show up in tandem with UFO sightings, which is weird to say the least. It is. They're like their
So
wingmen.
so also I'll say this. Phantom helicopters and airplanes tend to occur during UFO activity. So if there are a lot of UFO sightings going on at one particular time and place,
Mhm.
people will report phantom helicopters and phantom airplanes.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Very,
it's kind
very
of crazy.
interesting. Okay.
So, anyway, okay, so let's hop across the pond for just a minute to jolly old England to Hythe, which is located in Kent. It was a dark English evening on November 16th, 1963, and four teens were out for a completely innocent stroll along a county road. As they innocently walked along, they saw what appeared to be a bright star, which grabbed their attention. As they looked, it dove from the sky and headed straight toward them, disappearing behind some trees.
Hmm. I didn't know that this happened in England.
Mhm.
The group began to run, and the orb, now glowing and oval in shape, probably because it was pissed off, reappeared and followed them. Oh, a little bit of road rage. As the panicked, completely sober teenagers staggered along, the orb remained a steady 200 feet behind them. It moved when they moved and stopped when they stopped. Ooh,
Mhm.
interesting.
After a while, the group stopped to catch their collective breath, and the light, as it had been doing all along, also stopped. As the kids stood there, panting, coughing, maybe crying a little bit, a tall, dark figure wandered out of the woods and lurched toward them.
One of the teens reported that it looked like a human sized bat with wings on its back, which coincidentally is where the wings of non human sized bats are located. For sure.
I know. It's weird, right? Over the following days, more strange lights were seen, and those sent to investigate discovered three large footprints measuring 1 inch deep, 9 inches wide, and 2 feet long. Like, whoa,
Super whoa.
whoa. Hmm.
And 3 weeks after that, folks visited the same area and found the woods aglow with a strange, pulsing light. Whether it was the glow or fairy lights or a woodland rave was never determined because no one wanted to get close enough to find out. Interesting.
I know. In 1973, in Kristianstad, Sweden, some men in the woods reported seeing a giant blackbird. One astute witness whipped out his camera and attempted to take a picture. Sadly, the camera jammed, which John Keel points out is a common occurrence when weird shit happens. This seems to make it easier for folks to label witnesses as kooks, banana heads, idiots, and various other diminutive things.
So, are we at all surprised that the small town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, would encounter something as unusual as the Mothman? Why don't we take a minute to give our initial impressions here of the Mothman? Do we have any predetermined ideas, prejudices? Do you? What say you?
Um, I always think of the movie Mimic when I think of the Mothman. He was a giant Mothman who captured people and ate them. He was actually a bug, not a human. He was just a big man-sized bug. And I also
This sounds like a great movie.
um and I also will say I've been to Point Pleasant a couple of times and seen the Mothman statue, and it's really cool. They've got a museum there, and um the all the newspaper articles, and I mean, people were seeing shit and they were reporting it
Yeah.
to the paper. And so, um, what I find interesting, and again, I've alluded to this already, and as we go through this story, you'll get that there were many more UFO sightings than there were Mothman sightings at this time. And so you had three things going on. You had the Mothman, you had the Men in Black coming around, and you had a ton of UFOs. And so there were many weird things going on in the late 1960s with regard to this stuff. I I don't know that anybody has ever definitively explained what the Mothman is or was or could be. Um, so I don't know that I have any prejudices. I'm still just mystified. What about you? Do you have any prejudices or predetermined thoughts?
I No, I don't. I just think it's very, very interesting. I think it captivated a whole region, and so I think that when something like that happens, I don't know, I tend to want to believe that it's something other than our human psyches playing tricks on us, because I don't
Mm-hmm.
like that. I don't
Mm-mm.
like that if our when and I know that that can happen. I know. I mean, I've studied psychology a lot. I get that that happens and our brain fills in things that we're missing and it just does it automatically, whether you want it to or not. That's why eyewitness accounts are so terrible in crime trials. You cannot trust an eyewitness at all. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
to a certain extent, like if they're from a distance or something, you just can't trust them. Um, so I get that, but I I also just like to believe I like to give our species a little more credit than that. So there you have it. You
I
go
know it's
scientific, I go philosophical. There we go.
all right. Well, that's as per usual.
Per
Excuse me a
usual.
moment. I'm sitting on this pillow. Oh,
Oh.
now I'm short. Er, shorter. It wasn't as comfortable as I was anticipating it was going to be. Excuse me while I make a couple of minor adjustments. There we go. Good.
Okay, how thick was that pillow? Because, like, I mean, were you sitting on a brick pillow? Wha
It felt like a brick. It's
Please tell me it's thicker than mom's car seat. Oh, okay, that's thick. Yeah, that's pretty thick. Yeah.
and it actually is a mom pillow. I think she got it as an option. Sometimes she must have liked the
The paisley design or the fringe?
probably both.
Oh, I guess
And
that's
I
not
think
Paisley's. I don't know what it
she
is.
was kind of trying to decide, I'm guessing, if she wanted to redecorate her entire house in that. And so she just bought the sample pillow. And then
Right.
I tend to find these things dropped off at my house, along with bags of petite extra large clothing, which for some reason she thinks is my size. Spoiler alert, it's not.
Dude, all growing up from high school on and then into my 20s, when she bought me clothes, she would buy me petite, which I'm not. All y'all are petite. I'm not. I'm
I'm
not
not even
that.
petite. I can't
You
wear petite clothes.
you
My arms are
can't?
too long. No,
Oh,
my
your
arms are
arms
too
are too
long.
long? I know. Why did we get orangutan arms? Where did
I
that
don't
come
know.
from? I don't know either. But anyway, I can't wear petite, but she would buy me petite larges. Like that would somehow, Mom, I'm not 5'4". I don't.
What she does, here's what she does. She buys them for herself,
Yes.
tries them on, and then decides, I don't like this. Who can I give this to justify me spending money on it?
I
And it was
know.
always us. We were the hapless victims of a box shaped wardrobe for a woman who is as wide as she is tall. And
Oh, I know.
God love
I
you.
know.
We love you, Mom. We do.
We
But
do. We love you, but
for
you're
Christ's
tiny.
sakes, we're also not 80. So stop buying clothes and giving it to us. Seriously. I'm not ready for the elastic waist yet.
Although do keep up the perfume purchases because those are on point.
She does. I can't wear those. I can't wear stuff like that at a clinic where patients are already sick
Well,
with
I wear them to
respiratory
school all
stuff.
the time, and I get compliments on how I smell on the reg. Just saying.
Nice. All
Okay,
right.
so
Well, let's get back to 1966. And this is anticlimactic. Okay, so I'm sorry in
Hate
advance.
anticlimactic stuff. I
I
really like the climaxes, I'm just saying.
The first sighting in Point Pleasant wasn't the Mothman, it was just another UFO. In this sighting, a woman John Keel describes as a shapely housewife. He is very big on describing women in uh, misogynistic terms, which
You know what? Par for the course at the time.
yeah, okay.
It was.
This shapely housewife was waiting in her car just outside of her kid's school. As she looked to the sky, a glistening metal disc hovered directly above the playground.
Oh. Okay, sorry. I'm back on the shapely housewife. Okay.
Oh, God.
As she watched, a doorway opened in the craft and a man stepped out. Was it just a man or was it a shapely man?
It's just a man.
Just a man. Okay.
Yeah, it's just a man. We never comment on bulgy, shapely, beastly, anything like that in the men. We
Okay.
just,
All right. So just a regular old dude
mhm.
stepped out, standing just outside the doorway, which interestingly left him hovering in midair. Oh, she said this.
He wore a skin tight costume and had very long silvery hair. Oh, my tit just fell out on my blouse. I'm so sorry, Mr. Keel. Let me just tuck that back in there. Okay. Anyway, he was looking down into the schoolyard.
The children, who were not quite as shapely, thank goodness, as their housewife mother, showed up and climbed into the car. The shapely housewife, boobs now safely tucked back into her bra, she was momentarily distracted by their arrival. And when she looked back to the sky, the man and the craft had disappeared. Well, you stopped showing them.
That's right. Nothing to see here.
Nothing to see.
If women just put their bras back on, the war in Ukraine would be over. I would like to
It might help. Listen, guys like boobs. And if you keep showing them, not that there's anything wrong with that. You want to show your boobs, you do you. But maybe don't put it in conjunction with the war on Ukraine, is what we're saying.
And if you are topless, braless, sitting on the toilet taking a dump, we all know the Falk monster is going to reach in your window and
Oh, yes. Yes,
grab
he
you.
is.
He's going to go for a
Absolutely.
little
He's going to
tweak.
go honk honk there on the
Mhm.
boobs. Yeah.
All right. So around the same time period that this shapely housewife was experiencing this outside the school, Mary Heyer, who we'll hear a lot about, she was the reporter for the local paper. She had a similar experience. She was driving just across the river when she saw something in the sky.
At first, I thought it was a plane. Then I got a better look at it. It was perfectly round. I couldn't make out what it was, but I didn't give it any thought at the time.
And just when we think we get to stay in Point Pleasant for the rest of this episode, we need to tell you that's not the case because we need
Oh,
to mention what happened on November 2nd, 1966 to Woody Derenberger. And you may recall our Lanulos episodes. Uh, check out season 2, episodes 2 and 3 if you want or need a refresher on this.
and those are some pretty good episodes. I think there's a lot in there about naked cats. I'm not kidding. If I remember,
Well,
there's something with naked cats in there.
all cats are naked, um, unless they're
Or
not wearing a collar.
maybe their cats wore clothes. Maybe that was it. Maybe it was the opposite of naked. On Landing Lost, the
I'm
cats wear clothes. I don't remember. Anyway, it's something with cats, and you should check it out. Okay, but back to Woody. It was on November 2nd, 1966 that Woody first met Indrid Cold. That's right. And we're all familiar with how Woody was stopped by a spaceship blocking his path on a deserted road in West Virginia. Indrid Cold approached, carried on a telepathic conversation with Woody through the open car window, and told Woody to let the cops know all about it.
But what you might not know is that there was a similar incident that occurred just outside of Point Pleasant. On that night, A man and a coworker were traveling home toward Point Pleasant from out of town, and the same thing happened. A spaceship dropped from the sky, stopped on the road in front of them, and a spaceman emerged. He then proceeded to carry on a telepathic conversation with them.
I bet his leisure suit was silver.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Totally silver blue
Yeah.
leisure suit. Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Mhm. However, unlike Woody Derenberger, this man opted to keep his big mouth shut about what had occurred. That is, until he began to suffer such severe insomnia due to the stress of remembering. Oh, I hear you. When I remember things, I have a lot of some insomnia too. Um,
Mm-hmm.
when this became too much, he decided to tell someone who would never exploit his experience. The local reporter, Mary Hire.
Now, Mary Hire was a fixture at the local paper. She published a regular feature called Where the Waters Mingle. And over the following 2 years, she would work alongside John Keel to investigate the Mothman phenomena. She listened to this man's story and took lots of notes. The next day, she got a call from his son asking her not to print the story. Why? We can only speculate, but we suppose it was because he thought his dad was a nut and was afraid everyone else would come to the same conclusion, which is understandable. I mean,
Absolutely. At his request, Mary shelved the story, but discussed it with Mr. Keel when he showed up to investigate all the happenings. Together, they decided Mr. Keel should give the witness a call and see if he was still sticking to his original tale. Well, he stuck to the details and insisted that it was all true. It had all happened. Keel's and the man's conversation went like this.
look, don't use my name. I don't want to get involved in this thing. That scientist fella told me.
What scientist?
A couple of weeks after this thing happened, a scientist from Ohio came to see us. Man, he told us it would be better if we forgot the whole thing.
How did he hear about it? How did he find you?
Damned if I know. I can't remember his name, but he seemed to know what he was talking about.
As it turned out, the same scenario happened with Woody Derenberger on the same night. That's crazy. However, unlike the Point Pleasant folks, Woody went to the police, had a press conference, and became the very entertaining subject of our Lanulos series last season.
Just the day prior to this, a National Guardsman looked up to see a strange figure perched in a tree.
Oh, isn't that that's a song? That's a Bible song. Zacchaeus.
Zacchaeus, you calm down. Get out of that tree. Initially, he thought it was a man, a weirdo, perhaps, but a man just the same. But after staring for a bit, he realized it was a bird. And that was that. So he called the paper and said, Yo, Mary Haya, I just saw this friggin' bird in a tree, and get this, I thought that fucker was a man at first. I needed to tell somebody so that this would go down in UFO history in the book. It's a bird. It's a
I
fucking
needed to
bird.
get it in the book. I
Yep.
needed to get the sighting in the fucking book.
That's right.
Nothing happened with the sighting. I didn't see a naked man. There was no camel toe. There was no blue leisure suit on the Mothman
Nope.
because it was just a fucking bird. But I
He's
just
just a
wanted you to know.
fucking bird. But he was watching me with those beady
Mm-hmm.
little bird eyes. Little fucker.
Little fucker. Goodness sakes. All right. So now finally, here we are cresting the hill of background information on the Mothman and starting the descent into the nitty gritty. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited.
I know. That's right. Fast forward to November 14th, 1966. Bandit,
Oh,
a loving German Shepherd dog, was watching television with his humans when he felt the urge to take a shit. It
as
turned
one does.
out that Milk Bones the cat gave him were nothing more than dried turds from the litter box. His owner, Newell Partridge, said this.
It was about 10:30 that night, and suddenly the TV blanked out. A real fine herringbone a real fine herringbone pattern appeared on the tube, and at the same time the set started a loud whining noise, winding up to a high pitch, peaking and breaking off, as if you were on a musical scale and you went as high as you could and came back down and repeated it. It sounded like a generator winding up.
And while this was happening, Bandit began whining outside. Partridge said this.
The dog was sitting on the end of the porch, howling down toward the hay barn in the bottom. I shined the light in that direction, and it picked up two red circles, or eyes, which looked bicycle reflectors. Still, there was something about those eyes that is difficult to explain.
They were red, they were round.
They were red and round.
I just can't find the words. What are those red round eyes? How would I describe those red round eyes? I don't know. All right. Well, Bandit, being a very good boy, knew something was up, and he took off toward those eyes down to the hay barn. The next day, Mr. Partridge headed down to the barn to look for the dog. There, at the exact place where he sort of estimated the creature had been standing, he discovered lots and lots of Bandit's paw prints, but no sign of the dog, other than a
Oh,
charred dog outline. No, not really.
she is teasing. Did uh did Bandit ever show up again? Was he
I
just
can't.
gone?
He was just gone.
Oh, I bet he thinks twice about taking a shit again.
I know. Never trust a cat.
Goodness sakes. All right, well, let's legit or bullshit this. What happened? Where did Bannock go? Was he vaporized? Was he hit with a rolled up space newspaper? Did he get in trouble for dragging his butt across the spaceship floor? Sadly, no one knows what happened to Bandit, but we can only speculate. Or we can only speculate.
So, um, when stuff like this happens, apparently, according to John Keel, a lot of dogs go missing. Dogs disappear when
Interesting.
spacemen show up and that. So, what do we think? Do we want to legit or bullshit what everybody's seeing here? What happened to the dog? Um,
Well,
we can
I think
mention Lanulos again.
I think clearly the dog was space napped and lived out the remaining years on Lanulos. I mean,
Naked.
I think that I naked. I think that that is absolutely the logical timeline here for events.
I don't know what's going on. I don't believe Lanulos is real. I think people are experimenting. I think government is doing some weird shit to try and vaporize
Oh,
people's memories, and I think that the government is experimenting on people mentally. Uh,
oh, okay.
I I I don't know that for certain. I'm sure that aliens visited and that the Mothman, whatever, but I also think that Lanulos and things that happened to people who were whisked, quote unquote, whisked away in a spaceship to another planet. And we'll get to that more like in season 3. I'll elaborate on
You
this a
mean
little bit
episode
more.
3?
That yes, season 3, episode 3. Um, uh, I'll elaborate a little more on this, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But I kind of think that um, I think all these people are seeing what they say they're seeing. I think that dogs disappear because dogs are good bullshit detectors.
And they run for the hills.
So, um, yeah. So,
Well, I think that Bandit got on a spaceship, was taken to Lanulos, and lived out his remaining years chasing cats and was in Lanulos heaven. So
okay.
there we go. Because that makes
So,
me happy to think about that.
well, I think that is, you're right.
Your scientific mind is going, I know she's bullshitting right now, but I can't even play along.
Um, okay, so let's let's get to talking about Point Pleasant. What is it? Where is it? Why was the Mothman attracted to it? There are a couple things you need to know about Point Pleasant right out of the gate. The first is that in 1774, it was the site of a horrible battle.
Oh my goodness. Okay, fought on October 10th, 1774, Colonel Andrew Lewis and 1,100 militiamen defeated Shawnee Chief Cornstalk and his close to 1,000 braves. Oh. Cornstalk was mortally wounded in the battle, but before he died, he cursed the area, saying it would suffer hard times and sadness for years. Oh.
We don't know if the curse is true, but if it is, he sure took his time about bringing it to fruition. Mothman didn't show up until 1966, just 8 short years before the statute of limitations on curses was up.
And there you have it.
There you have it.
I do think I'm gonna just do a side note here. So, up in Wayne, Nebraska, where I used to live, that
Mhm,
was part of what they call the Logan Valley. Okay.
mhm.
And rumor has it that 100 or 200 years ago, whatever, Logan Valley was blessed by a Native American medicine man. And that is why, whenever like a blizzard would come, I mean, I guess they get snow. It just doesn't seem like it gets hit hard. It always seems like everything happens around that area. Stuff happens, but not as bad and detrimental as what happens around it. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
people believe that the blessing is why.
I love
So
that.
I think it could work the other way as well, that curses are real. So anyway, just a little history. Could be bullshit there for you. I don't know. So here's what you need to ask yourself as we move along with coverage of this subject. Were the events in Point Pleasant the result of a curse or just a happy accident?
The second thing we need to point out about Point Pleasant is critical to understanding some of the nuances and weirdness of what happened throughout the years of 1966 through 1968. Point Pleasant, West Virginia sits right across the river from Gallipolis, Ohio.
Well, okay. Here, the Kanawha River flows into the Ohio River, sort of forming a T shape. And this is important. Why, you ask? Well, first of all, cryptids love watery areas, unlike M. Not Night Shyamalan's
Right.
cryptids and signs. Remember the Falk monster? Yes. And Momo? Yes. And let's not forget the Loch Ness monster. There's a wet one for sure.
Also, all these sightings of the Mothman culminate in a major disaster, but we'll get to that in the next couple of episodes. For now, let's talk about the TNT area of Point Pleasant, where the Mothman chased a car and terrified two couples who were just out for a drive.
Right? Oh, these poor little teens.
Mhm.
Point or couple, I mean, I don't know if they were teens, but anyway, I'm just going to read and then we'll find out together. Point Pleasant was a place charged with storing explosives during World War II. Large brick and cement igloos were constructed to house all that gunpowdery stuff, but the area was later abandoned when peace came about.
Naturally, it was because this was a government run operation. The ground around the TNT area was, oh, I'm going to say that over. Naturally, because this was a government run operation, the ground around the TNT area was contaminated, meaning no construction or commerce could spring up there. But it was good enough to be dubbed a wildlife area.
Aw, our government. I tell you what, they just make me a little verklempt and so proud.
They love us so
I
much.
love it so much, and I love the animals and nature and the things that sustain life so much. It's so great.
Thanks, government.
Thank you, government. Okay, and if there's one thing we learned from watching Scooby Doo, it's that abandoned explosive warehouses are breeding grounds for hauntings as well as bad guys in masks, for sure.
Sadly, even Velma and Freddie couldn't come up with a trap big enough to ensnare the Mothman.
Oh, man, because they would totally unmask that shit and then it'd
Mhm.
be over. Okay, November 15th, 1966 was a dark and lonely night out at the old TNT factory. Mr. and Mrs. Roger Scarberry. Ooh, I like that name,
Mm-hmm.
Scarberry.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. and Mrs. Steve Mallet. 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 We'll say Mallet. Mallet, you think?
Millette. I'd
I'm
say
going to go with
Millette.
Mallet. Were riding around in the 57 Chevy belonging to Mr. Scarberry.
We don't know why they were out there, but we know it wasn't for sex.
Oh,
Maybe smoking a little doobie or something, but that doesn't really matter in the end. What happened when they were out there began a legend that continues to this day.
for a while, Scarberry steered the Chevy here and there along the back roads of the TNT plant, roaming here and there. But after meandering for a while, they pulled over beside the old generator plant. As they stared into the darkness, they saw two red glowing lights, circular and looking to be about 2 inches in diameter and spaced 6 inches apart. Oh,
Now, Mary Millette was what John Keel describes as a strikingly attractive brunette. She gasped and wondered aloud what in the hell they were seeing. Something like, "What the hell is that?" I'm imagining.
with her strikingly attractive face, she said that.
Exactly. Mhm.
Roger Scarberry said this. And this is in Point Pleasant, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
It was shaped like a man, but bigger, maybe 6.5, 7 feet tall. And it had big wings folded against its back.
Linda Scarberry said this. But it was those eyes that got us. It had two big eyes like automobile reflectors.
Mrs. Kravitz, calm down. um, okay. Roger hit the gas, and the group fled from the area. They swung out of the gate and hit Route 62, but they saw it again on a hill in front of them. As the car whizzed past, the creature spread its wings and soared vertically straight into the air.
The Chevy pushed ahead, and the creature appeared alongside it, keeping pace with ease. Roger pushed the old Chevy to 100 miles per hour, but even that didn't discourage the beast. It stayed right with him, those big eyes staring right at them, and it called out, squeaking like a big mouse.
Really? Like a mouse, you say? Interesting. I wouldn't think it would have a sound of a mouse. I suppose if it's a bird, maybe it would. I don't know. I don't know. Roger said this. It followed us right to the city limits. Funny thing, we noticed a dead dog by the side of the road there, a big dog. But when we came back a few minutes later, the dog was gone.
Well, what could the group do but head straight on to the police station? Okay, not so fast. First, they tried to head back to the TNT area to be sure that they'd actually seen what they thought they saw. But for reasons still unknown, common sense prevailed that evening, and they turned around and hit the police station hard and fast.
That's what she said. Deputy Miller Halstead was on duty that night. Mr. Keel makes no mention of how attractive he was. So we're guessing he was just sort of average looking. He listened to the reports from the kids and said this.
I've known these kids all their lives. They never been in any trouble. They were really scared that night. I took them seriously.
And Deputy Halstead, I think they were probably so glad that you were there. The deputy followed the kids back to the TNT area in his patrol car, and I'm sure they were thrilled to be going back. There was no sign of the creature, but as he pulled up outside the generator plant, his police radio hissed out a loud, garbled signal which he described as a tape recorder being played on very high speed.
He didn't see the Mothman, but he was creeped out enough to tell his boss, the sheriff, George Johnson, Again, no idea how attractive he was. Johnson held a press conference the next day. Local reporters interviewed the 4 witnesses, and from there, the story grew and grew.
And that's where we'll pick it up next time. We've got lots more to talk about, lots more to tell you about the Mothman, the Men in Black, and the fallout from all these sightings, and lots more bad accents.
Yes. Oh, for real. Absolutely. That's why people tune in.
Uh-huh.
We want to say it is great to be back for season 3. We love you all. Thank you so much for listening. You make every episode fun.
And please reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or email us at Jen and Andy at Ichabod'sHouse.com.
Ichabod'sHousePod.com.
Is it? Ichabod'sHousepod.com? Okay. Or, you know what? Facebook message us, because that is a great way to get a hold of us since we can never remember our email.
For real. I want to give one more shout out to our friend Dennis Murphy from Ireland. Dennis has an amazing podcast, and he is going to be airing his last episode here in the next couple of weeks. It is called, one second here while I pull it up. He's got that beautiful Irish accent.
Yes. And it's
For
real.
real. Yes, it's called Something Strange. I wanted to say Stranger Things, but I knew that was wrong. And his stuff is really good, and I think he's done a Mothman episode as well, which is good. We plan to have him on our show at some point in time, God willing, and should all the planets align properly. There's a pretty big time difference between here and Ireland, but
Our people on Lanulos will help make it happen.
they will make it happen. Maybe we could
Well,
just fly over there in like an hour or so. And
yeah.
anyway, so we want to thank you all for listening, and
Yes. Thank you.
tune into Something Strange when you get a chance, because it's an amazing episode. And those episodes, I'm sure, will still stay up on Spotify as time goes on.
Okay. Well, fantastic.
Yes. And until next time, remember, Ichabod loves you.
Carry a flashlight and always bring extra pants.